This is a Defocus Media production. What's up, everyone? It's your favorite optometrist, Dr. Daryl Glover.
And I'm Dr. Jennifer Lyerly, resident optometry nerd.
And welcome to Defocus Media, optometry's #1 podcast, where we discuss the hottest topics, latest technology, eyewear, practice management, and more. So sit back, relax, and defocus.
Well, hello, and thank you guys for joining us tonight. We're back with a new live stream edition, and this podcast episode is all about making money and protecting the money that you're making, because there's a lot of ways to lose money out there right now. We've got an expert on finance, the founder of ODs on Finance, Dr. Aaron Neufeld, joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Thanks for hanging out with us. This is super exciting because, you know, as optometrists, as eye care professionals, we earn a lot of money, but some of us don't know what to actually do with our money. So I'm very interested in learning more from the guru, the expert of the eye care industry. So I'm really looking forward to digging deep into this conversation this evening. How about yourself, Jen?
Oh, absolutely. And Aaron, we've had the pleasure of speaking with you on an episode before. So I also want to just kind of let you give an update on what's going on with yourself, because I know ODs on Finance has only been growing and doing amazing things in this past year.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, once again, I want to thank you guys for having me on. And finance expert, that's very generous. So I appreciate that. But yeah, just in general, ODs on Finance has been growing since the last time. I think it might have been close to double the size of what it was last time I talked to you guys. We're continuing to add on new things to the program. We've got different things going on, whether it be refinancing or different programs for individuals that are looking to get consulting work done. Just a lot of new avenues that we're exploring. And our CE events actually have been our newest thing. So we're trying to do one every couple of weeks and just get that COPE-approved CE out to individuals, making it all finance focused, so relevant to hopefully most people's education. And a lot of new stuff coming in the horizon, so definitely look out for that. I'm sure most people are members of the Facebook group at this point, but that's where all the action happens. That's where all the conversation happens.
We have over 9,000 members, so like the majority of optometrists are members.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got
like the 10,000 plus club, aren't you?
We are, yeah. We're hitting 11,000 pretty soon. Wow. So yeah, and we limit it to ODs and students only. So try to keep the conversation very directed, and yeah. So it's been good. It's been good. Can't complain. And other than that, everything else has been going well as well. So
recently, you guys just had an actual CE course, right? Yesterday, the day before. If you don't mind, just telling us who was your guest and how that worked out.
Yeah, we had a CE event on Tuesday, actually. It was Dr. Mick Kling, and kind of the practice ownership guru of optometry. Gave a 2-hour lecture on what would normally be something really boring, financial statements and creating a budget for your practice. Actually kept it very lively and interesting for 2 hours, and very easy to digest. And we got a lot of requests for another lecture from him regarding practice valuation. There hasn't really been a CE lecture on that, so we're working on that, and that should be out in April. So I'll let you all know when that comes, and we just got to get it COPE approved. So,
well, I actually, you guys have a great e-newsletter that you send out, and so creating so much great content. But this newsletter came out a couple of weeks ago, right on that weekend where the GameStop was going like through the roof, and just kind of like, okay, let's talk about some core fundamentals of investing. And it couldn't have been more timely. So I immediately messaged you right away and said, like, we should really do a show around investing smarts and investing fundamentals, because there's a lot of craziness happening right now on the stock market that's easy to get caught up in. So that's kind of the take-home platform of this conversation this evening. And I want to start out by saying, obviously, like, everybody's going to be in different situations in different phases of their career, and where your money needs to be going right now, it might be totally different if you're trying to pay down student debt versus, you know, Daryl and I were looking at 10 years out of optometry school coming up this year. So, you know, we're moving on to that wealth building phase in our career. I know many of you guys are planning for that right now too. So let's just kind of pitch this off with getting your opinion on why should we invest in the stock market instead of just keeping our money at a bank.
Yeah, definitely. So one thing that I tell students and new grads is one of the biggest parts about growing your wealth and investing is time horizon. So it's important to get in early. Albert Einstein, he called compound interest the eighth wonder of the world. And he said, he who understands it earns it, he who doesn't pays it. And it's so true. And really, what's bigger than the interest rates, the gains, is just how long you're in the market. And you told me you were going to ask me this question, so I pulled up one example because I just want to illustrate just the importance of being in the market for a long period of time versus just putting a bunch of money into the market later on. So first of all, S&P 500 index fund, we always preach that, just the easy way to kind of grow your money. Historically returns about 7 to 8% annually. And if you're looking at bank accounts or CD accounts, different things like that, you're looking at about 1%, especially these days. It's just the interest rates aren't very good. In fact, when you're putting your money in a bank account, you're letting it sit. The rate of inflation is actually beating what your interest rate is in the bank accounts. I read recently, with all the stimulus money coming in, we're at about a 2% inflation rate. So the dollar is losing value faster than you're gaining interest if you're just leaving your money in the bank account. So definitely want to look into the stock market, look into index funds. And then, my one example is, say you're 30 years old, it's kind of the new grad optometrist out there. And let's say you have $100,000, not saying you actually do, but if in this example you do, if you were to put that $100,000 into the S&P 500 fund, I used our online calculator on our website for this, at 30 years old, and you plan to retire at 60, that would net you about $811,000 at retirement. And then you never contributed ever again. You just put that $100,000 in at 30, wow, 7% interest. That's what it would compound to. Now take that 100,000, you're 42, you finally start, you're like, okay, I'm going to invest. Never invested before. You put it in at 42 years old, and then you put in an additional $1,000 every month up until you're 60. So that's $100,000 plus an additional about $116,000. If you plug that in the calculator, your net is only $781,000 at 60 years old. So it kind of just really shows you the importance of the time horizon and of compound interest.
Yeah.
Would you recommend for someone who is just a very new graduate and they are facing student loans and probably have that mindset of like, all right, all money that I have that I don't have to live on needs to go towards my debt? Should they be looking at investing even at that point?
Yeah, I think a good balance is important. So it really depends on your interest rate. So when I graduated, my rates were about 6.8%. So that was pretty even with what the average market return was. And then you got to remember your interest rates for student loans, those are fixed. You're always going to have that. That's a fixed rate. That's a return against you constantly. So I recommend kind of a mix, and especially if you can refinance your loans. And right now, there's a bunch of things going on with federal loans being at 0% and not having to pay. So take advantage of that right now, whether you just want to knock the loans out or invest. But now is the time to actually use your money, not towards material things, but try to grow, whether it be reduce debt or invest. But yeah, a good mix is important. And if you can get those interest rates lower than, I'm not sure what they are right now with current students, but if you can get them lower than that 5 or 6% range, then you're in that healthy range where you can mix a little bit of investing and paying off student loans.
Well, next question that comes to mind then is, how do you decide, right? How much should you invest versus keeping in cash? I know right when the pandemic happened, Daryl, everyone was talking about like, ooh, how much like cash do you have readily at your disposal? Because if your money is all tied up and you can't easily get to it, suddenly everything was closed, you were out of a job, you needed to pay staff, and many doctors were having major cash flow issues with keeping their offices up and running because they didn't have cash readily available. Obviously, this is hopefully a once-in-a-lifetime event for all of us, but how do you decide how much cash is enough to have on hand?
Yeah, we for emergency funds, that's what we call it when we have some cash just stowed away in a bank account, just ready in case something shows up. We normally recommend about 3 to 6 months of expenses, and that's what you're going to hear across the board. And once again, that's not money that you're investing. It's not money that you're really touching. It's just in case, pandemic happens or car breaks down, you need a new washer, dryer, different things like that, where it's not a planned expense and you can just knock that out of the park. For practice owners out there, the standard is about 7 to 10% of your gross revenue. Just leave that, and we call those reserves, but essentially it's an emergency fund as well. You know, we got lucky with the pandemic in that the government kind of jumped in, helped us out. Practice owners got PPP and different things like that, and even the stimulus checks and the student loans that the government kind of helped us with. But you know, that was one time, and if this were to happen again, you know, for some awful reason that African strain comes over, and you know that we are going through this again, I'm not sure if the government can keep doing that, because you know they got to keep creating money. So it's always good to just have all those emergency avenues available.
Yeah, and I'm familiar with the 3 to 6 months, and I've heard the same reason why you stated, but also my financial advisor also told me that, you know, just because of disability, if something happens, you know, you have to show that you're not working for about 6 months or so. So you want to have that income or that money sitting there so you can live off of that until you're able to take full advantage of that. But of course, like you stated, anything can happen, and you want to be able to make sure that you're able to survive, take care of your family, your bills, and all that other jazz. So would you state that the first thing you need to do is build up that security blanket before you invest any money, or would you still kind of take that hybrid approach of student loans, invest, and then slowly stack up your investment, or excuse me, your safety net?
I would have the safety net available first, because there's no sense on jumping on the trapeze if there's nothing underneath you. It's because if you fall, you fall. So I would definitely have that first.
I'm curious, how worried are you about optometry, especially private practice owners, after seeing what took place with COVID-19 and not really having cash reserves on hand? Do you think that this is a major issue in regards to just eye care or healthcare? I mean, we know it's a big issue with the world, but again, we are high income earners, so you always at least have some type of cash on hand for emergencies. I mean, do you feel like this is something that is a critical issue, or you feel like some of your colleagues were able to hold on like they were supposed to? I mean, what were you seeing, especially being with the platform that you guys have on Facebook?
Yeah, it was definitely a wake-up call for a lot of individuals that at a personal level, but also at a practice level. It's like, hey, this thing can hit, and all of a sudden your cash flow can go from really high to zero. And once again, it's the importance of just having that emergency fund. Also debt leveraging too. I think a lot of individuals are realizing, okay, maybe it's not smart to leverage this much debt to pull in, to bring in this fancy OCT machine plus this machine and this machine. And then also have to have your practice debt to keep debt low and, have some cash reserves on hand. I think it was a good learning experience, especially, we work with a lot of younger ODs and younger practice owners. So I think we all kind of learned for the future that, okay, this is something that's could definitely happen again.
And that debt issue, that's interesting, because now everyone's trying to jump into medical optometry, right? More of that medical model. So they're spending a lot of money on all this equipment, and this took place. I wonder how their practices are feeling after experiencing COVID-19 and having all this equipment that you have to pay for. I know some of the vendors helped out in regards to delayed payments and things of that nature. But like you stated, if this happens again, that's probably not going to work next time, because folks have gotten probably burned on some cases, and it's that one time generosity that they're helping out in regards to the industry. Yeah,
man, I completely agree with that, because especially these equipment companies, got to remember, a lot of these, especially these smaller companies, they're operating kind of the same way. They're leveraging debt too. They had R&D costs, all of this different. They have to pay workers and all of that. So it's hard to see that happening again. But I always talk about just look at the ROI of the different machines you're bringing in. Medical is awesome. That's going to be our future, just looking at the trajectory of everything. But look at the ROI of those machines, make sure that they're valuable, and make sure that they can keep their value, that they're not, even when pandemics hit, you can still bring in patients for their glaucoma workups. There's certain things like the dry eye, spa, that might not be something people want to jump into the office for during a respiratory pandemic, but glaucoma, everyone knows they need to get that treated. So just kind of, tugging and looking at different things and how that would all work out.
I will say, medical optometry aside, let's say you're not running a medical optometry practice, that money's tied up on your frame board. So there's every single thing that an optometrist is investing in, whether it's in their frames and their optical or the piece of equipment for medical optometry, it's tying up cash in the same extent. So I don't think that optometry moving towards more medical base is putting us at risk. We're just investing in things that hopefully continue to grow in reimbursement rates and specialization. So the frame board was also probably really worrying people when no one was being able to come in.
Well, Jen, that brings up a great question too. You know, I had a patient come in and they worked for Chick-fil-A, and I actually told this story on another podcast. But you know, they tore down the Chick-fil-A that they worked at, and they built a new one, and they built a bigger kitchen because they said that, you know, there's going to be a change in behavior of people coming in. They're no longer going to want to sit inside and eat. They're going to want to get their food and go. So with that being said, when it comes to optometry, do you guys feel like maybe folks are going to start having smaller practices as far as the amount of real estate that they own, or do you think they're going to go bigger because now people are abandoning places, realizing they don't need that commercial space, and it might be a great opportunity to build a bigger practice and have more lanes? I mean, what are your thoughts in regards to that?
That's actually a really good point. Yeah, I never even thought of that with the Chick-fil-A. That makes sense that they're going towards that model. Yeah. Yeah, who knows what's going to happen to optometry, but you know, right now it's a good time to get into commercial real estate, and that's another thing. If you can own your real estate, that's a huge equity builder for running a practice. That's going to take a lot off your back if you're a private practice owner that can do that. And yeah, right now, I mean, with a lot of businesses going out, that's a lot of real estate that's available, more supply, less demand, lower prices. If you can get in, that's great. In terms of how the outlook of optometry is going to look, that's a good question. I can't really speak to that. I don't know. We'll see how it goes after this whole thing is done, and who knows when it'll be done. So
I actually think a lot of people, just from speaking, a lot of people have had their best year ever, and that, as crazy as that sounds, and financially in their offices. And what many doctors have found is that they can see a lot less patients, and it actually is improving their bottom line. And so I do think there may be a movement in some offices to, Dr. Knight giving us great advice to pay yourself. That's always a good point to remember to do. I think there's going to be a movement in some offices that less actually is more, and the proof is in what happened this year. And other offices might go in a different direction and decide, like, all right, well, we need to offer the bigger kitchen sort of experience, right? And optometry practices might look less and less alike because of that. And you'd get a very different experience depending on if you're a patient going to Dr. A versus Dr. B. And that hasn't historically been the case.
Yeah, I talked to quite a few colleagues about what you just brought up, and yeah, everyone's noticing that a lot of people have had a good year. And at the RPP, you know, the revenue per patient has gone up quite a bit. And there's been a variety of articles that have been written about it. I know a lot of the eye doc guys have written stuff about it. And I think it boils down to, you know, patients, they just want to be in one place, get everything done, and they don't want to take the prescription, go anywhere else, because that's risk of exposure. And then just, you know, they feel safe with their optometrist, with the environment that they're used to. So I think it all worked out in terms of the optometrist's favor in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, this is a fantastic time to really create or build loyalty with your patients, because like you said, they don't want to go to a million different places to shop around. They want to be able to do that one-stop shop, maybe even look at your stuff ahead of time online, come into the office, have that stuff ready, see the doctor, get the optical experience, and go home. So if anything, we really need to make sure that we're stepping our game up when it comes to customer service when the patients when they come in, because the last thing you want to do is lose them to the person down the street. This is the time that you can really make patients for a lifetime. So you definitely want to take full advantage of it.
Definitely.
Well, I mean, all of us, I think, have felt like we made an excellent decision in choosing this profession, because we are getting paid well to do a job that we love. But then kind of circling back to outside of optometry, making sure we're actually making the most of the money that we're making. And I wanted to pick your brain on the stock market specifically. And so there's a lot of different ways to get into the stock market. Some are more passive and safer, and some are way riskier, and the risk and reward that comes with that. What would you recommend to doctors as far as investment strategies?
Yeah. So there's a lot of different ways to approach this, but the best way, if you're a doctor that just wants to invest, but you don't want to spend your whole day, you know, researching stocks and different things like that, the simple tried and true way is just to look at index funds and look at ETFs. So that's the simple way. And what you want to look at is index funds, specifically ones that are broadly diversified. And that's a big word that just means ones that follow a lot of different tried and true companies that exist both in the US and across the world. And you want to look at index because those are going to be low cost. And the reason for that is essentially they're tracked by a computer. So the computer's doing all the work for you. There's all these algorithms that are basically just spitting out the best thing that can give you the best returns. So you just kind of buy into this fund or buy into this ETF and you get the return. When you look at mutual funds, that's another word that is often brought up. A lot of those are actively managed. That means that, there's a guy in Wall Street that's picking those stocks and trying to get you the best returns. But the problem with that is that he's getting a chunk of whatever you make. I mean, that's it. Yeah. And that's what, gets him on his yacht and all of that. So there's a cost to that. And the studies have shown that really none of these mutual funds ever return more than the index funds that track the big companies. So for the simple investor that just wants to grow their money over time, just stick with index funds, S&P 500 index fund, or a total stock market index fund. We always say, if you're a member of Vanguard, there's something called VT Sax. That's the total stock market index. And the saying is VT Sax and relax. So you just put them there. Don't even think about it. Yeah. Simple as
I
that.
love this advice, Eric. But when I first, graduating out of school, I was like, oh, well, I need to invest. So in my head, I was like, well, if you want to invest, you have to have an investment group that you go with. I don't know why. Clearly the education on this is not good because I didn't even realize it was an option for you to just get into the stock market. So I have money, of course, in this account that I have been in there a long time ago. And then, looking more into things, we're like, oh, let's just open up our own VT Sax account. And time again, Daryl, that we've seen that account is beating what I'm getting actively managed at the company that I'm using. And it's kind of like, why do I even have money over there? I could just put it all in the account that I'm using with no fees.
Yeah.
What about yourself?
Yeah, me personally, I like to. I think it's cool. I don't know the stock market like up and down, but I have a good overall view of it. And for me, I was doing some research a while back, and I came across this guy that was talking about the satellite method, where you basically have, majority of the money diversified, but you have it in different ETFs, just getting that good coverage. But then also maybe 7 or 8 stocks where it's, like you can have, I guess, your growth stocks or whatever it may be that have dividends and things of that nature as well. And that might make up 2 to 3% each one of those. And the remainder is all ETFs. And that's been doing well for me. And I like that. So I go that route. And of course, the tech space has really been winning, especially over the last year. So that's been pretty nice as well. And just the 401k, with the company, that helps out as well. So between those things, and then we do have one investment home that we rent out. So, having that for when we retire, I think will be key. And then just business ventures with Jen and other things, starting to see that start to add up slowly. So, it works. I actually got put onto something by my financial advisor, which Jen, I was going to tell you about. He was telling me it's called a SEP IRA.
SEP IRA.
Yeah. Something that we could put money into, Jen. I think you could put up to 10% of your earnings up to like 58,000. So you can actually get some tax-free money in regards to that. So it's like a lot of different ways to try to figure out how to put away some of this money and also bring down that tax bracket as well. So, but it's interesting. It's exciting. I love it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. For me personally, I kind of take a similar approach that you do. I've got a few ETFs. VT Sax makes up the majority of my portfolio, but do about 5 to 10% in individual stocks, just because it's something I like to do. If you've been on the forum, Dat and I, we love to research stocks. So if it's something that you like to do, I would say, go for it. Obviously, don't make it all of your portfolio because it is risky. But yeah, if it's not something that you want to do, don't just take someone's random advice to buy the stock. You make sure you understand what you're buying. So I mean, you wouldn't buy a car that someone just told you, hey, buy this car, right? I mean, you would test drive it. You would make sure it's a brand you like and it has good features. So it's the same with the stock market. You really got to analyze these individual stocks. So. Yeah,
sure. Well, we have a question here from Andre. So how much money would you guys advise to start off with if my budget is small?
That's a good. How small is the budget? Are we looking for a specific amount or just a percentage? Or
Andre, shoot us another message, man, so we can answer that question. But I mean, I think there's no amount that's too small. I mean, as Aaron had mentioned, it's all about that compounding interest in time. So whatever you put in, as time goes by, it's going to grow. So even if you're starting $10 a month, $10 a week, or something, it's better than just letting it sit in your account, right? At some point in time, you're going to reap the rewards as time goes by.
Yeah. The key is to start. Yeah, just put the foot on the ground and go. Yeah.
Right. One of the things that y'all were mentioning, of course, was yes, you have your ETFs, and that's roughly 80%, of what you're doing. But then you're also picking some individual stocks, and I think where the appeal is on that is from research that you were saying is that you'll get roughly a 10% return eventually on those long-term ETFs. With individual stocks, you could see 100%, 200%, 300% return. And that's, of course, really attractive to people if they want to really see their money go up. But, you never want to invest in those more than what you're willing to lose. So everything that, when you put on an individual play is not diversified. It's not safe. So you could get a 300% increase, but you could also see it totally evaporate, which happened to a lot of people recently. And that's the gambling aspect of it. That's truly pressing the lottery button, though with probably a little bit better odds than the lottery. But
yeah,
I agree. And Jen,
that's very true.
It's funny you mentioned that. It was actually someone was on CNBC, and they were talking about. It was actually kind of sad in a way. They were talking about with social media, you would see with women and just the negative comments and things that they would get, and some of them would commit suicide or do negative things, and they were saying that you're going to see that with men during this era because they're putting so much money into the stock market and they have no knowledge about it, and they're losing money. Like there was someone that actually committed suicide because of the options with Robinhood. I think it was last year. Now they're filing a lawsuit. So it's like you have to be careful with this stuff because, like you mentioned, it can really go away and you will never see it again. And I think even with the Robinhood guy, I don't even think it was that bad. It was just something he couldn't get in touch with the people from Robinhood because there was no 1-800 number or something like that.
Yeah, I believe there was no customer service that he could get a hold of, and then I believe he was trading on margin with options, which if you're thinking about options, that's extremely risky. Make sure you know what you're doing because we've had a lot of members that are like, oh, options, how do we get involved in that? It's like if you're asking that question, then you probably shouldn't be doing it.
So you got to be careful when you're jumping into the stock market because your money could go away. So you really want to work with people that are educated and trained in it, or just reach out to the guru here, and I'm pretty sure he can point you in the right direction. But being diversified and starting small and slowly building up is probably going to be the key. But going back to Andre, he said $100 a month. If he has $100 a month, what should he do with it?
Yeah, so $100. I guess that's total a month. So I mean, honestly, you want to set up a budget first. That's so important. So just living expenses, your rent or your mortgage, food, things that are required to stay alive. That's vital. And then if you have debt repayment, obviously you want to know what your minimum is, and then you want to set a target amount. And then after that, the rest of that, start investing that. That's how we should be doing it. Just try to cut out the unnecessary expenses, especially for the new grads out there. You live like a student for 8 years. You can continue doing it for a few more years before you really start to reap the benefits. And if you wait those few years, you're going to reap so many more benefits. So I think it's worth the wait. So.
Looks like Dr. Knight gave us another comment here. SEP RA is great if you don't have employees. I believe you have to invest the same in employees that you do yourself. SEP RA may be better with employees of small business. So it looks like we need to have Dr. Knight on the show. She's an expert, of course, when it comes to lens technology, whether it's contacts or eyeglasses or just lens options in general, but also looks like she's a finance guru as well. So Dr. Knight, we got to get you back on the show.
One other thing about the short-term trading, like if you are going to like, ooh, this stock's going up, like everyone's getting AMC right now, I better buy some AMC or something. If you cash out on that stock after a week of holding it, a month, there are bigger tax implications as well. So what is something that a doctor needs to be aware of as far as like short-term capital gains versus long-term and the tax implications?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, if you're day trading or buying or swing trading, which means that's between different days, you're going to get taxed with short-term capital gains. And really, it depends on it's basically like your ordinary income. It depends on what state you're in and all the different. I don't want to give percentages because they're different everywhere. But you look at your tax bracket and essentially what you're getting taxed on your regular earnings, that's what you're going to get taxed on your capital gains as well. And that's pretty large. I mean, especially for optometrists who are all high income earners, we're in the upper brackets there. That's just something to keep in mind, because the problem with day trading, a lot of individuals that get into it, they don't realize, come April of next year, they're like, oh, why am I getting hit with this huge tax bill? And it's like, oh, wait, I made money on the stock market, so I got to give some of it back. Mm-hmm. And yeah, long-term capital gains, that's after a year of holding a stock, and those are a lot lower. So normally that's the average is about 15% on those, whereas a short-term capital gain, at least in California, that could be up to 37% depending on your income level.
Yeah,
so
and you're like 35 to 40%.
Yeah.
So right, you get hit with the dividends. There's a fee for that. I heard someone talking about that.
Yeah, actually, dividends. So dividend producing stocks or mutual funds or whatever you're doing, those are really good to have in a Roth account, because that is tax deferred. So you don't actually pay tax on that. So that's something that we recommend. So pretty much anyone can do. We've preached the Roth IRA a lot on ODs on Finance. It's pretty much something anyone can do. You can do a backdoor version if you're over the income level. Now, the one thing is the IRAs that Dr. Knight was just talking about, that kind of throws a damper on doing a backdoor Roth IRA. So you have to keep in mind that you got to keep those clean. But yeah, essentially it's $6,000 a year that is essentially tax-free once you take it out. So it's definitely if you want to put it into dividend stocks or REITs, if you want to get into those, that's real estate investment trusts, which basically pay your rent every month. Those are good to put in there because all that gets tax deferred. So definitely, and that's a whole conversation that we could have on its own.
Yeah, we need to have that conversation, because I have a REIT and it's doing extremely well, and I get that monthly dividend. But now I'm wondering, man, how much am I getting taxed? I need to revisit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something to keep in mind. Yeah, especially once again with high income, it's you get hit with that upper bracket, and
Well, I think actually this might be a good segue to talk about, like, obviously I think all of us agree, like, the safest thing to do is put the majority of your stuff into an ETF. But if you have a little money that you're like, I kind of want to play around with things, see if maybe I can like get an even bigger return than probably a 10% return is what we should kind of shoot for and expect with the long-term ETF. All right, you mentioned REITs. What are some of the things that you personally have found appealing to you in investing your fund money, if you will?
Yeah, fund money. So there are definitely stocks that I find appealing. I love biotech. That is just something that I find fascinating, and it's one of the most dangerous things you can get into, because basically you're betting on a drug or a device either failing or working. So it's either it goes straight up or straight down. So, but really, honestly, stocks are fantastic. I mean, if you're into that, if you want to look into that and research stocks, that can be a huge return. And there's definitely a few things if you really want to get individual stocks. You want to look at annual reports. So every company provides an annual report that kind of gives you a baseline for the company. You want to look, I know it's going to sound boring, but you want to look at balance sheets and income statements. You want to see how their cash flow is doing. It's just like if you own your own practice, you want to look at all of this, see how the health of the company is doing. And also management is definitely important. You want to see, you can look up, CEOs of giant companies on Glassdoor and see how they're managing their employees. And that's important because that tells you the work culture, and that factors into growth. And then of course, earnings forecast, that's something you can easily look up on Yahoo or different finance websites that kind of shows where the stock is going. And there's about 3 different ratios. I won't get too into depth because this is kind of boring, but they are important because I know a lot of people are getting into individual stocks.
It is not boring because everyone that's tuning in is into finance.
That's right. Everyone
okay, that's true.
Figured out about this. So.
I was like, I don't want to put everyone to sleep tonight. But
let's learn together, man. Go ahead and fire away.
All right. Yeah. So if you were to pull up on your phone, on your iPhone, if you pull up stocks or if you pull up Yahoo or different things like that, your PE ratio is one that's going to pop up, and that's a pretty important one. That's your price to earning ratio. And so you definitely want to look at that. I was actually showing a colleague today what PE ratio means. And I pulled up Apple's, and I believe it's kind of like in the 30 or 40 range. Don't quote me on that, but it was in that range. And then I was like, okay, now pull up Tesla. And Tesla is at about 1,300. So yeah, and that's the price. Remember, that's the price per share versus what that share is earning. So obviously if you use that ratio, it's extremely overvalued. But then Tesla's one of those weird unicorns where like it could be a huge success. They've got a huge kind of avenue that they're going down. So we just never know. So that's one.
Like Tesla's one of those where it's like, oh, it doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't make any sense, but it's working for right now. Yeah. But yeah, that's why there's this constant argument: is this just a bubble, or is this actually something that's going to be useful because they're collecting data on drivers? They're doing all these different, they got solar panels. Is it even a car company? There's all these different questions about it. Yeah. But for the most part, that PE ratio is going to really tell you the kind of the health of the company. And if you take that one step further, there's something called the PEG ratio. And so you're taking basically the price, the earnings, and then the growth of the company. And so that's kind of combining all of that. And then, your phone's coming out. And then earnings per share is another one. EPS, probably hear that if you tune into MSNBC or watch Kramer or something like that. So once again, that's how much is the company earning per share? Because remember, you're buying a share of the company, you're buying a very small portion. What are they earning? Because you're essentially giving them money, you're funding them, and in return you need something. So it's what are they earning with your money? So that's one way to look at it. And then price target, that's probably the last thing that you're going to hear about. They'll say, oh, the price target for the stock in 6 months is X amount. And the way they determine that, they take that first concept I talked about, the PE ratio, and then they take that last concept, the EPS, and they multiply this. And that gives you your price target. So one way, anyone can actually calculate a price target. You can just look over the year of a stock and you can see what the lowest points of the PE and the EPS are and the highest points. And then if you find those two ratios, basically that gives you the overall price target of the stock. So that's just some lingo that you'll see, but important to understand if you really want to get into investing in individual stocks. I know a lot of individuals are just jumping on Reddit or on Instagram and seeing that people are, they see diamond hands and they want to just buy something. But yeah, if you look at it's funny, if you look at GameStop's PE ratio right now, they can't even calculate it because it makes no sense at this point. It's like it's so ridiculously high. Yeah,
Speaking of PE ratios, you have to be careful, right? Because it's going to be different in each sector. So you want to make sure that you're comparing apples with apples and not apples with oranges, right? Because people can see a number and say, oh, man, that's very attractive. But in that sector, it may be completely different from whatever you're comparing it to. There's a lot of people looking at certain stocks that are just out there and comparing that with everything else.
Yeah, that's another thing, too. That's actually a really good point. Because, if you look at PE ratios in the tech field, they're all going to be pretty high because a lot of these tech companies, it's all based on potential and reach and different things like that. They haven't actually collected all that money. Yeah, if you look at Facebook throughout the years, back when they first went public, their PE ratio was like extremely high. But now that they've done the whole Facebook ad things and they've monetized pretty much every single aspect of Facebook, now the PE ratio is actually looking pretty good. But then if you look at, oil companies, or if you look at like a food company, you're going to see their PE ratio is extremely low, and that's because they've been around a lot, and they're earning money. They're just selling product. That's essentially what they're doing. So
yeah, man, I would love to get your opinion on life insurance, in particular variable life insurance. What are your thoughts of that? Because Jen and I both have kids. I have a son, and I want to be able to leave him something, but to continue to pay that up until I die, and I know at some point in time it'll start paying itself. But that tax-free money when you retire to be able to have, and then have a safety net for your child. That's valuable. But is it worth investing in that, or just taking that money and just putting it into the stock market and letting it play? I'm really stuck on making that purchase and making that jump versus just keeping term and then hoping that the stocks go in the right directions that I have right now.
Yeah, for me, and we've harped on this a lot, just cheap term life insurance. Invest the rest, because once you're getting into these whole plans, these variables, all this different stuff, once again you're making the guy that sold it to you rich. That's what we always say, because you can't control it, and then you got these fees. There's all these underlying hidden fees. The math has always worked out where it's just better to take it and invest, even if it's just in a low cost index fund.
Yeah.
I know the insurance companies don't ever want anyone to hear that, so they will fight tooth and nail against that. But that's just kind of the math of it. We're not trying to go against insurance agents, but
Yeah.
if you jump on any forum, White Coat Investor, any of these forums, they all say the same thing. They've calculated it out. It's not worth it. So
Gotcha. Well, thanks for that advice. Now, this is the $1 million question that someone asked. Marvin Howell, thoughts on crypto? Because I do not know anything about crypto. I see, Bitcoin, and then I saw something about an ETF for Bitcoin, and I'm just like,
yeah.
what the hell is going on, man? Like, can you just I don't even understand this. I have no clue, and I'm not even trying to go research it. So I'm going to get the notes from you and be able to start to understand the processes. So if you don't mind touching on that.
Crypto is interesting. So I have a very small position in it. Crypto to me, it's so two-sided because my fundamental side is like, oh, what is this? This is crazy. This has no value. It's all speculation. But then there's a part of me now that's coming out where it's like, hey, this dollar is inflated so much. This is decentralized. This is its own thing. A lot of companies are putting money into it. You saw Tesla made their huge purchase. Even
$1 billion worth of investment.
Yeah.
Starting to take payment in it and everything else. So I'm like,
yeah.
if people are doing that, like, are we missing out? I mean, and then I saw something the other day. Someone bought something with Bitcoin, and they thought they spent like, I think $100,000, and it was actually really $1.2 million that they ended up doing of crypto. Because no one really
there's so much fluctuation that it's hard to tell. But yeah, I mean, I'm not going to give advice on Bitcoin because I think anyone that gives advice doesn't know what they're doing because no one knows, to be honest. I mean, that's the honest truth. Who knows? Maybe it'll go to $1 million a coin. We don't know. Or maybe it'll plummet to $1,000. I have no idea. But I would say just be careful with it. I want once again, use that kind of 5% rule that you're doing with, your play money with your stocks. I wouldn't put everything into it, even if you do believe in it, because you don't know. I mean, there's so many things that are manipulating it, and it's unregulated, so anything can manipulate it. That's the problem. And yeah, but it is interesting. It fascinates me. I watch the ticker all the time, and I'm always amazed by. I think it's at like what 52 or something.
Around 50K, yeah. So I do have a position in Bitcoin, but like you said, it's not the core fundamentals of my investment sort of thing. But interesting enough, like 7 or 8 years ago, I remember seeing a post on ODs on Facebook where it was an optometrist out in like San Francisco, and they were going to accept Bitcoin for their exams. And that was the first time I'd ever heard about Bitcoin, was this doctor accepting it for payment. And I was like, what are they talking about? And so for a long time, I was like, I'll believe it when I see it. But I do feel like there's enough infrastructure around it at this point. It's not as strange and risky as it seemed, 8 years ago, sort of thing. And worth considering again with your fund money and my personal bit. They actually have with Bitcoin now as well. You can do, it's like a CD almost, but I am now gaining a 3% APR on my Bitcoin, which is really, really great. So my Bitcoins are earning Bitcoin, which I'm really liking right now.
It's like the ultimate compound if Bitcoin keeps going up. But yeah,
so
it's
it's not. I again would not advise anyone putting all their eggs in that basket.
Yeah.
Either you're gonna be a genius or you're gonna be real stupid. One of the two, right?
Yeah.
Years from now, if that thing takes off, you're gonna be sitting pretty nice and retired and living your best life. That's for sure.
Well, the one really, it was really hard to get into Bitcoin for a while. I mean, like to try to get your Bitcoin account was awful. We have Gemini now, and then I was really worried. I was like, okay, I get my money in there. What if I want to get it out? It was so hard to get it. How am I going to get my money out of this thing? But
I don't even know where to go with it. I don't even know where to go to get an account or anything at all. Like that.
Only certain places. So like Gemini, there's certain places that only do Bitcoin. You can't just like get it at Fidelity or your normal financial brokers.
Yeah, and I'll tell you a silly story, actually. It's a personal story. I initially bought some Bitcoin back in 2016, and I put it on a USB drive, and then the crash happened back in 2018, where everything just kind of plummeted. It went skyrocketed and just plummeted, and everyone kind of lost interest in crypto for a while. Put that USB drive and all the passwords that go with it in a bin, and then I moved and then I put that in some storage unit. And so I'm still trying to locate that. So and I heard there's a lot of stories like that where
there's a lot of stories where people have old hard drives or USB Bitcoin that would be worth millions now.
Yeah, just the way it works. So don't be like me in that regard. If you're going to buy it, make sure you know where it's at all times.
Yeah, I feel like you should go keep it in the bank, right? They need to have these little, like, this safety deposit bots. I don't know if they still have those, but maybe that's
some sort of
the last time I stepped to the bank. So I don't know what they keep in there anymore. Everything's online, but it makes sense to keep it there. At least it'll be safe, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, we were talking about, like, it's so important if you're going to invest in some of these more risky, high risk, high reward sort of situations that you do your due diligence. So where would you recommend doing that due diligence? Because I think it's so easy right now for you to get into echo chambers, Wall Street Bets being an example, where it's like everyone's talking about this great stock and it's going way up and we don't want to miss out. And you think you're doing a lot of research, you're doing a lot of reading on the stocks, and you think you understand and know things. And then, I was one of those people that posted my diamond hands picture when my game stock was going up. And then on Monday, it all came crashing down and I looked like an idiot and I've lost a lot of money on that. But it was money that I had to have been willing to lose up front. So it's okay. But yeah, how do you prevent that from happening to you when you think you've done your due diligence and you knew what was going to happen and it still doesn't happen quite like what you thought?
Jen, I have an answer before Aaron gives an answer.
Go for it.
You go to ODs on finance and you have all the answers there.
Y'all want to tell me to sell on Friday instead of?
I appreciate that.
I thought Monday was the day to sell.
It is an open forum though. I remember when GameStop was going crazy, there were a lot of people posting about it. So, yeah, we had a little team meeting. We're like, gosh, should we limit these posts? And we're like, no, it's free speech. We'll just let people and then we'll put our input in. We'll send the newsletter out to make sure that. But when it comes to especially all these hype stocks and even crypto, different things like that, I think there's just 3 rules that everyone should know. First of all, get rich quick doesn't exist. I mean, we learn that as we go throughout life. If get rich quick schemes, they don't work because the person that's giving it to you, if they already got rich, why were they bothering giving it to you? Why are they bothering wasting their time, selling you a course or having you sign up for something? It just doesn't add up ever. Building wealth is always kind of a slow process. Number 2, if you hear about it on social media, you're too late. That's another big thing. Because if you're going to ride these rises in stocks or different things like that, by the time everyone's in on it, that's when people need to sell to actually claim their gains, and it's going to be too late at that point. So that's rule number 2. And then rule number 3, all of these are based on speculation. There's no actual value. I mean, I love GameStop. I went there as a kid when I used to play a lot of video games, but in this day and age, it has no value. To be honest, it's kind of a brick and mortar that's suffering. It might stick around, who knows? But it's not. It doesn't have the value that everyone put into it. That was purely manipulation based on a short squeeze. So. Right.
Yeah. But you did the due diligence and you're like, oh, the short squeeze is happening. I've read all the stuff. We know it's massively shorted. Nobody, I think, was investing because they believed in GameStop. They believed in the short squeeze that everything looked like it was supposed to take place that never looked like it actually happened by some manipulation of the market.
Yeah. Except for the initial people. I mean, that the guy that just got interviewed, deep effing value, he believed in it. And then they came out and said that, that the guy that started it, he was actually a professional investor. He wasn't an amateur. So I think that's why he was put on the SEC stand for that. Mm-hmm. And then Michael Burry, the guy behind the Big Short, he was all for it. He thought that it was going to grow because I believe the Xbox and the PlayStation, the new ones, are still using physical discs. So he thought that would keep GameStop in business. So yeah, there's different things like that. But in terms of due diligence, once again, just go through the whole analyzing of individual stocks. What I talked about is just very baseline. And you can look that up online. There's a lot of good guides, a lot of good books on that. Dad's actually writing a full guide on that. He's trying to condense the 100 pages down to 10 pages to make it a little more digestible. So yeah, we'll have that out, and yeah, we'll send that to you guys if you want to send that out to listeners. And the other thing is make sure you're using a reputable site. Yahoo is, I know it's like a dead website, but their finance is fantastic. It's probably the best finance website there is. Zacks is a good one as well. Morningstar, Motley Fool, even the the Apple stock tracker is pretty good for just looking up basic news and different things like that. But yeah, when you jump on these weird forums, and there's no regulation on those, you have no idea what's happening. And a lot of times it's pump and dumps. A lot of these people are coming together. Similar idea with GameStop. They'll do it with smaller companies. They'll do it with penny stocks. They'll tell you it's so great, and they'll post a fake DD, a fake due diligence to get you to invest in it so that it goes up. Happened to crypto back in 2018. A lot of these small cryptos, I had a guy in my gym that was like pushing this one. He got everyone in the gym to buy it, and then he of course sold everything once it started skyrocketing. And
oh wow,
yeah, and I think he went to court for it. So,
oh wow.
But yeah, there's this is like, yeah, you got to be careful when you're scouring the internet. Make sure you're going to reputable sources. So.
Sure. Awesome.
Well, we appreciate so much of your time this evening, and I'm sure obviously we raised a ton of questions. We appreciate, as always, all the audience involvement. I think everybody knows from listening to this conversation that they need to jump over to ODs on Finance Facebook group and become an active member. But anything else that we have to look forward to coming up in the 2021 for you guys?
2021, yeah, just keep a lookout. We're continuing to just grow the website, adding new features, trying to add a lot of new content as well. And CE lectures, we got a lot of good ones coming up. We got actually a free one on OCT coming up in a couple of weeks. And then actually our next one before the Mick Kling one is Gary Gerber is actually going to do one on myopia management and how to make it profitable in your practice. So we're getting that one COPE approved. And then, yeah, Dr. Mick Kling's going to come on again, do some more practice management. So a lot of good CE coming on. And then, we brought, a lot of people might know, we brought Chris Lopez on as kind of our contract negotiation guy. So for all the new grads out there, if you need help, just reach out to him. And other than that, yeah, just a lot of new content and hoping to just keep the ball going and keep everyone educated. That's always been our goal. We realize that we never get taught finances in optometry school. We get taught how to refract and how to, detect AMD. So that's why we're here. We're trying to just provide those resources for everyone in our field.
Awesome. And for those that want to know more, go to ODs on Finance. But also, we're going to have a new podcast joining us pretty soon. And I think you guys already know who that is. So be looking out for more information in regards to finances with the expert and his crew. We're looking forward to you guys joining the family, and we're going to make some magic happen over here. We're going to have a full platform of everything. How to manage your practice, specialties, and now the finances. This is the piece that we were looking for because, as Dr. Aaron mentioned, that's not taught in school, and sometimes it's not taught in our youth. So this is going to be a huge piece to really help take eye care professionals' life to the next level. So we really appreciate you hanging out with us this evening, man. We're looking forward to growing with you and ODs on Finance. And if you guys have any questions, please join the forum. Hit up Aaron and the rest of the crew. They always have all the answers, and if they don't have it, they can figure it out. And they have a lot of great partners that they can collaborate with you as well to really get you to that financial freedom that you're looking for. But thanks dearly for hanging out with us.
Yeah, thanks again for having me. And honestly, it's such a great program. Defocus is fantastic. I mean, you guys cover everything.
We enjoyed this one with you.
All right, you guys, have a great one. We'll talk to you next time.
All right, colleagues, and it's a wrap. Thank you dearly for hanging out with the Defocus Media team. We hope truly something resonated with you. And if it did, be sure to give us 5 stars and make sure you follow us on all social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, you named it. And our handle is at Defocus Media on all platforms. And until next time, be sure to keep it 2020, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode.